Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Tell Me Yours, a storytelling podcast with me, your host, Trey Everett. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tell Me Yours, a storytelling podcast with me, your host, Trey Everett. So excited for my guest today. She is a teacher, she is a singer-songwriter, but most importantly, she is one of the most incredible contemporary jazz artists you will ever listen to. Caity Gyorgy is on the pod today. She's here with a wonderful story about how she was discovered, and we have a great chat about what's in store for her. Without further ado, please welcome Caity Gyorgy.
The beauty of this piece is that it will never be played the same way twice live.
100%. I think that's a really big reason as to why I love the music so much.
That's cool.
Because it's always changing. But I mean, it's just the nature of the genre. I mean, if I were to go see, I don't know, if I were to go see the Rolling Stones or something and they didn't play like Sympathy for the Devil exactly how I know it, I would be kind of mad.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
I think jazz musicians are some of the most talented musicians that exist in the universe. And just to watch them create something so organically in the moment. And like, there's a point where I would go like 3 or 4 nights a week to this club.
Amazing.
And like, I was underage, but they knew me, so they let me in. I just couldn't drink. And so I would just like sit and just watch this music. And I was like, man, this is like so amazing to be able just to watch these people create art in real time in such an intense way. Because it's like not simple. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
I would assume that jazz is something that you always were sort of drawn to in terms of like listening to it. But when did you start actually like picking up and being like, hey, I want to do this. I want to perform this. Like, I want this to be my preference in like art that I create.
Well, actually, I didn't really get into jazz until much later, until I was 17.
I love it.
And it's kind of a funny story, actually. But I started seeing a drummer. He's a jazz drummer. And so on one of our first dates, I took him to my favorite record shop. And usually I would be looking at the Motown or like the soul stuff. And so I was like, oh, this is a really good Otis Redding album. You should get this one. Oh, here's the Shirelles. This one's really good. And he's like, oh, well, here's Birth of the Cool by Miles Davis. You should buy this one. And I was like, it's like $40. But I was like, well, I want to impress him. So I bought the record and I went home and I spun it on my turntable and I hated it so much.
Oh my God.
I'm like, this is instrumental. There's no vocalist here. Are you kidding me? What's going on? Of course, now that record is absolutely one of my favorites. It's That's iconic.
So good.
It took me a while to really get into it, but I kept listening to it, and then I started listening to more like singers, and I listened to a whole bunch of jazz singers like Ella Fitzgerald and Carmen McRae, Sarah Vaughan, Mel Torme, Anita O'Day, June Christie, Betty Carter, and from them I got more into the instrumental side because there would be instrumental solos and whatnot. And now I listen to more instrumental solos than I do, or instrumental jazz than I do vocal jazz. The drummer and I have been together actually 6.5 years today, which is funny.
Congrats.
Thank you. So I've been interested in jazz for 6.5 years, and I've sort of been performing it for about 6-ish years. I started as soon as I started seeing him. I started learning a bunch of different standards. I bought myself a real book. I'm learning A to B, A to Z, I guess.
Yeah. So you are gonna tell me a story.
Yes, I would love to tell the story about how I got signed to my record label. Because there's a lot of moving parts that happened with this.
Perfect.
And
Tell me everything.
Yes. Okay. So I think there's a couple things to know before I really get into the gist of the story. But
Okay.
I have a transcription account on Instagram, and
Okay.
on this account, I post transcription videos of me singing instrumental jazz solos. I usually can transcribe a solo in about an hour and a half, and what I mean by that is I'll just listen to it over and over, and I write everything down on manuscript paper with a pencil, and then I learn the solo as I go, and, I'll write down a line that I hear, I'll listen to it, I'll sing it back, I'll write it down, I go back to the beginning, I'll listen to what I have, I sing the next part, write it down, go back to the beginning, and I do that until the entire solo is complete.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
So that account is very important, a very important part of the story. And I also have to mention that in January of last year, I released my first album by myself independently. Cool. And I am very passionate about sort of marketing music and making sure that it's getting to the right places. And, I released it by myself. It was a lot of work, but I made sure to do lots of singles because, of course, that's the way that the world is working right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was lucky that every single that I pitched got added to Spotify editorial playlists.
Oh, wow, that's incredible.
Thank you, yes. And it gave me this huge platform. And, you know, my monthly listeners were up, my streams were up, and I had some validity from that.
Yeah.
So, back to the transcription account.
Did you start the transcription account just for fun, or how did you end up creating that?
Oh, that's a good question too. So, there's so many little stories that can go off of these.
I love it. Yeah.
I started the transcription account in May of 2018.
Okay.
The account is called Lift a Day, and initially I had started music college in September 2016, and I had never transcribed anything before. And I have good ears. I'm very blessed to have good ears. And because of these ears, I was put into a second-year ear training course. I surpassed the first-year course, which seems like a really cool thing, except for the fact that I had absolutely no jazz theory knowledge whatsoever. So everything that was talked about in this ear training course, I had no idea what it meant. I didn't know what a 2/5 was. I had no idea what any sort of progressions were. I thought, no, it can't be that simple. It can't. I know that it's like, I can hear the root going D, G, C. I know that that's the 2/5/1, but like, I don't know what the qualities of those chords are. Like, it can't just be like a 2 minor, 5 dominant, 1 major. That seems too easy, you know? It was, and I kept psyching myself out. It was horrible.
Too easy, yeah.
Exactly. But I had absolutely no idea. Like, to put it into perspective, when I went to college, I thought that a rhythm changes was something like Green Dolphin Street, where the rhythm changes from swing to Latin, depending on what part of the song you're at. A rhythm changes is actually just, you know, like, it's like the I Got Rhythm.
Yeah.
Like the I Got Rhythm, it's just the harmony from that song. But I had confidently went up to one of my friends after they played Green Dolphin Street and said, yeah, I love that rhythm changes. Green Dolphin Street is one of my favorites. And the friend was like, what the hell are you talking about? And so that's where I was at when I got into this class.
I love it.
And we had to do 4 transcriptions throughout the year. And I'd never transcribed anything before. And the first one that I did was Chet Baker's Ladybird transcription. And it's a really great solo, very melodic. And it was a good one to get me accustomed to it. And I was so nervous because you had to perform it a cappella, memorized in front of the entire class, which I think is just evil. Yeah. Because, I mean, it's just like a bunch of like 18, 19-year-olds in front of each other. Yeah. And they're not, I was the only singer in the class. So at least I could sing. But a lot of the other people couldn't even sing, and I felt so bad for them. But this whole transcription thing, I didn't know what was going on, to be honest. And I was not the best at rhythm quite yet. So what I did was, okay, I'm like, the rhythm is the hardest part for me. So I'm just going to write down all of the rhythms without the notes beforehand. So I filled up my manuscript paper with a bunch of just like the B, just a B, and like eighth notes and half notes and quarter notes all on the B, just the middle of the treble staff. And then after I had gotten all the rhythms and I got my boyfriend to check it over for me to make sure it was right, I added the note names. I didn't put it in the staff. I wrote like C, D, E, like above the staff. And then from there I had to input it into notation software, and I had to really understand. I'm like, okay, well, is this the C, the octave up or the octave down? Because it could go either way. And it was so time consuming now, and it took me days. Now it takes me an hour and a half.
That's crazy, yeah.
So that was my beginning sort of thing with transcription. But I noticed a lot of my friends, that was my first year. And then I didn't do anything in my second year because I'd already taken the second year course. So I was done with ear training as far as I was concerned. But I noticed a bunch of my friends who were instrumentalists were transcribing a lot. And they all sounded amazing. And they all had conversations about, oh, I love listening to Dexter Gordon. Oh, well, have you checked out this Charlie Parker solo? Oh, well, what about this Hank Mobley record? Like, and I thought, well, that seems really cool, and I don't really know what's going on, but I want to be a part of it. So after my second year was done, I decided to challenge myself by doing a lift a day for the month of May, which is where the name of the account comes from, lift a day. And I did a transcription every single day for the month of May. And I would just go to school in the afternoon, put myself in a practice mode, and I wouldn't come out until the transcription was finished. And I realized, like, you know, the more I did this, the better my ears got, the better I got at improvising, and the faster I got at transcribing. And so then I just started it as a private account on Instagram. But then it started taking off, like, with using hashtags and stuff. And then I started transcribing people that were alive who would repost my things. And the account grew exponentially. And so, I started the account for me as a means of practicing and holding myself accountable. Now, like, when I have time, I haven't had time in so long to transcribe anything. I'm hoping over the holidays I can do a few, but now I do it just for fun when I have time. the account is really important, and the use of hashtags and the discover page on Instagram is also incredibly important. So, there was this person who saw my transcription videos. His name is Morton Block.
Okay.
And he saw one of my transcription videos of a trumpet player and sent it to his grandsons, Matt and Jacob Block, who own La Reserve Records in Brooklyn, New York. And he showed them my videos, and I think they thought it was probably pretty cool, but didn't really think much of it until I transcribed a La Reserve artist named Benny Benak III. And Benny is a fantastic trumpet player and vocalist and composer, and just overall like a really great person. And I transcribed one of his things, and he reposted it onto his account, and he was signed to La Reserve at the time. And from there, La Reserve started following me on Instagram, and they noticed this was all around the same time that I was self-releasing my album. And I posted, oh, thank you so much to Spotify for adding me onto this playlist and this playlist. And, oh, I'm so happy to announce that this song just hit 100,000 streams. Thank you, blah, 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 for this press. And I was doing, like, you know, the radio, like, sending it out through, like, to different hosts that I knew and trying to get as much buzz around this record as I possibly could. And, you know, I had it all professionally mixed and mastered from my time in college, because in our fourth year, we were able to do a recording project as our sort of capstone project. And so I was lucky that I did jazz, so I did most stuff off the floor. So I did 3 projects out of my time in the studio. And this, the record that I released in January was the first of that. And so La Reserve started following me. I started following them back. I didn't really think anything of it. And at this point, I was anti-label, because I was like, you know what? I'm doing all of this by myself. I'm getting so much good stuff happening on Spotify. Who needs a record label?
I love it.
So then after, I think after they realized how well my one release went, or for me at least on Spotify, I can't really speak to them. And if they're listening, I'm sorry if I'm butchering this, Matt and but after I released that, I got this email saying, hey, Caity, this is like La Reserve Records here, and we're really interested in knowing what you have in store. So we'd love to chat with you. And I was like, okay, well, I guess like a meeting can't hurt.
Yeah.
So I had a meeting with them, and they're like, oh yeah, well, do you have any projects in store? And I said, yeah, well, I've got this 5-song EP of all original music that I arranged for a 10-piece band that I have recorded, and it's all mixed and it's all mastered, and I have all the art, and it's all ready to go.
God.
And of course, like everything just sort of happened to line up absolutely perfectly. Like the transcriptions, their grandfather seeing the transcriptions as I was releasing my album, Benny reposting my transcription as I was releasing my album, and then I was just sitting on an entirely ready to go project that I had no idea when I was going to release. So,
oh my gosh,
we had a chat.
That.
It's uncanny.
It's
I think
wild.
about this all the time, how just absolutely perfect it was that this happened. And so I said, yeah, this is what I have. I'd love to send it over. You can let me know what you think. It's just an EP, but I'm really proud of it, and I think it's a really well done project. And so we chatted. They liked the project, and I signed the contract in December, I think, of last year. I think I honestly can't even remember.
That's amazing.
When I signed it, but it was amazing. And you know, I've been sort of pen pals with their grandfather, actually, Mort, and he sent me notes, and I've sent him notes as well. I sent him a copy of the album, and I said, thank you so much for showing Matt and Jake my music, because without you, I don't think this would have happened. And he replied back on his own stationery that has like a letter from Morton Block, which is awesome. And
that's so cool.
It's just so fun to be a part of that community. And so but I always think about just how interesting it is that everything happened as it did, because without the transcription account that I started in 2018, nothing would have happened. Absolutely. And if I hadn't released the album by myself, and if I hadn't taken the time to learn about the marketing and the single pitching and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't have had the success to, you know, catch the attention of a record label. Yeah. And then, you know, if Morton hadn't seen the video, if I hadn't transcribed a Benny Benak solo, if he hadn't reposted it, then the label wouldn't have seen it. And if I didn't have a project that I was just sitting on that was ready to go, like what would I feel like the conversation probably just would have ended there.
Yeah.
So we released the project.
It's so wild. It's so
crazy.
Cool, though. I mean, I feel like you always hear that saying that like success is when preparation meets luck. And I feel like that's like a perfect example of that. Like you've spent years preparing, in various ways, and I'm sure in a lot of ways where you didn't even at the moment feel like it was preparing for anything specific, but like
Absolutely.
in the background, this is preparation, and then this person just happens to stumble across it. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah. It's so funny. And we released the project on July 9th, and it did well.
Congrats.
And somehow they got me the covers of Spotify playlists, which is wild.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And the covers of Amazon and YouTube. And I think we might have been a title playlist. I don't know if we got a title cover, but we got Amazon and YouTube, and we got a few Spotify ones, and it was just absolutely crazy. And they got me reviews in Downbeat and Jazzwise, and just... it was honestly like a dream come true, so much that, I applied for a grant. And in Canada, we're very lucky to have granting agencies from the government. So I applied for a Canada Council for the Arts grant, and I was funded for my next record, which I'm releasing with them next year. And I have absolutely no plans on changing record labels because I just feel so supported. And I don't know. It's one of those things. You're right about the, planning and luck and hard work, and it all just kind of comes together to make something good happen. And now I'm sort of living my dreams because of it.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Congratulations on the new album too. Like, that's super
Thank
exciting.
you.
What was that conversation like in terms? Because I know you said, like, I mean, like most independent artists, you're very anti-label. What was there, like a specific something that just kind of changed your perspective on what that relationship could look like, or what was that process like?
I think that I had this misconception that labels would own everything, and my contract is a distribution deal, so I still own everything. I'm just essentially leasing it out.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which I like a lot. And it was funny. About a week and a half before I had my meeting with the label, I was in this like sort of just industry call with a bunch of different artists and industry professionals talking about the business. And they asked a question. They're like, "What do you think of labels?" And I raised my hand. I'm like, "I think that you can do it as an independent artist, and you don't need a label." And then literally a week and a half later, I went into this meeting with La Reserve, and I changed my mind completely.
That's
but
so good.
I was like, oh boy, here I am. I seem like I just...
so funny. Yep. I love it. I mean, but I think that speaks volumes to your label and the people that run it and the relationships that they're interested in developing. So I think that's nothing but praise to them, to be honest.
100%, and they're so great. The thing that I really liked about them is that they're very artist focused. That's cool. And so they're very keen on helping the artists out. One thing that I was really skeptical about was the contract, and I sent it to a whole bunch of like different, like, I have family members that are lawyers, and I'm like, you need to help me with this. I need to make sure that I'm not signing anything away. Yeah. And then I was talking to another record label person, someone who owns a label, and he's like, record deals like that, they don't exist. Like, it's probably like not true. And I'm like, well, I mean, this is what the contract says.
Like,
and it turns out
maybe your deals don't exist.
Maybe your deal. Yeah, exactly. So that was really interesting. But I thought, well, I mean, this seems pretty amazing. They're going to try and get me sync opportunities to like sync my music up for movies and TV, which is really cool. And that's not something that I know how to do myself. And they have all these connections. I kept saying, well, what kind of connections do you have? I know that I've done a lot of really good things on Spotify myself, and it doesn't really seem like I need help on the Spotify front. Like, what can you do on the other aspects? And they said, well, we've been getting playlists with Amazon and Tidal and Deezer and YouTube Music and Apple Music and stuff, and we think that we can do that with yours. We think your project is going to be really great. We've listened to it, and I think I realized they're really supportive of the music, and they like the music, and they said, okay, we really like this one, and they were like kind of singling out like specific songs, and I thought that was really interesting, because I thought it seems like they actually like believe in the music, and they're not, the contract is very much in favor of the artist, and it's very generous towards the artist, especially considering the work that they do. And so I thought, it seems like based on the people that are already on the label and the work that these guys have done, I think this seems like a good thing. And of course, I just released my record independently, and I got a bit of press, but I didn't get a whole bunch of press. And then I was seeing the other artists on the labels getting really cool reviews and features and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I guess a big thing is that there are other artists on the label that are so interesting and that I really look up to, and that are really, like celebrities to me, like in the jazz world. And I thought, well, I mean, to be associated with that label and those artists is like, that's invaluable. Like, that is extremely important, especially at this point in my career. Like it's I think it's kind of necessary.
I love that.
So you know, and I just, they are so supportive, and they were just extremely, extremely interested in the music itself and myself as an artist and developing me as an artist. And so, I mean, now we're working on releasing the next one. And last week we had a whole meeting. They're like, okay, Caity, we got to figure out ways that we're going to market this, different ways that we can like do social media campaigns, or that we can maybe pair you up with some brands. Or when you're visiting New York, we're going to take lots of photos, and then we'll have lots of content to post on our page. And they're the ones who actually got me on TikTok. And they said, Caity, you need to be on TikTok. You need to be posting all this stuff. And, you know, just post once a day and post it at like 9 p.m. and then just see what happens. And then somehow one of my videos just went completely viral, and that helped with the Spotify. And so I know from my weekly meetings with these people that it's just like it's a very supportive environment. I'm very happy where I am. And it's kind of interesting because it's still independent. Like
For sure.
I still own it. It's not like I'm signed and they're recording it for me and owning everything. And I don't really like that, because I think artists should be in control of all their music at all times.
Yeah.
I think that's, I don't know. Unless I'm doing an album of standards where I would have to pay for the royalties anyways, I don't want other people owning my own music, you know?
100%. Yeah. I'm working with an indie publisher, and that like was kind of the same situation with me, where it's like, hey, I have the ability and resources to put this out by myself, savvy enough on social media where I can market this myself, and like I'll see sales. And I was like, so like how will I just kind of putting it plainly, like, hey, how will I benefit from partnering with you?
That's exactly what I said.
And they were like, hey, we believe you, and that's how we think we think you still should do all of those things, because it will help you see success. Here's the stuff that we have access to that we know that you don't. And
that's exactly how it went down for me.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think there's something really cool about still, because like you said, it is still indie. Like I'm still an indie author. Like I'm not with like a huge publishing company, but I kind of prefer it that way, because I still, even not only just in terms of like the logistical ownership of my art, but like even just like the ownership of the creative process. And like they don't tell me what to do. They don't tell me what to write. They don't tell me what to edit. Like I am in control of my work, and then they're helping me just get it so that I can continue to do that.
And I think that's such an important part for any sort of, you know, publisher or label, is
Absolutely.
that, you know, they trust you as the artist, as the writer, to make a very good product. And they know that based on your previous work and your personality and your work ethic, that it's going to be a good product. And that just gives you all the creative control. And just, I think that trust is one of the most important things. And I feel like maybe other labels, when they take control of what music is being put out, you kind of lose that trust, and then you lose some of the artistic value of the projects.
Yeah. Or even just like the excitement of like being the artist wanting to continue to create. Like sometimes I feel like if you get kind of continuously put in that rut, you kind of like lose the zest for what you're doing. And you're like, I don't really feel like doing this anymore. Like I'm so
100%.
burned out on it. But when you have a group like that, like your record label, who are like, hey, no, we want to support you as an artist because we believe in you as an artist and we love your art. It kind of like allows you to keep that process exciting and energetic, and allows you to want to continue to do it, I think.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, it's just nice to be supported, I think. You know, I feel like as independent artists, we're usually our own, like, our sole cheerleader. And, you know, like, we're advocating for ourselves all the time. So then to have other people who, like, truly and honestly believe in the music and believe in it enough to advocate for it, and push it to other people to listen to and encourage its growth, I think that's just one of the best feelings in the world.
That's so cool. I'm so excited for you, and I'm so happy for you. And I like I said, like I've absolutely fallen in love with your music. I think it's brilliant. And I was listening to it earlier today. I'll continue listening to it after we chat.
Thank you.
So what is next on the docket for you? Like, what do you have anything exciting coming up? What are you going to be working on next?
Yeah. Well, my next one is currently being mixed.
Cool.
And well, that's another story. That's more of a horror story. But just another testament to how incredible the label was. I sort of had an unfortunate situation with one of the engineers that I was working with, and just things were not going well. Things were over a month late, and it was just getting extremely stressful, and I had to find somebody else to complete the project. But the label was so incredibly supportive on this. And I feel like, as like a young person in the industry, I can always think like, oh, this is my fault. Like, how did I let this happen? Even though in this case it wasn't. But the label was so supportive. And they're like, Caity, no, this isn't your fault. We're going to fix this. It's going to be great. The timeline is flexible. Like we might not be able to do everything anymore, but it's still going to be just as good. And, having that support was awesome. So
that's great.
My next album is being mixed by a really, really fantastic engineer named Singu Han, and he's out of Montreal. I'm working on the art for it. I love to do like design the art and stuff. I actually hired an artist though this time to make the art sort of look like a Blue Note cover or something like that. Something very vintage. So it's still kind of like my songwriting, like sort of vintage but modern at the same time.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'll be playing shows around Canada. I'm actually teaching an advanced ear training course at McGill University starting in January.
That's incredible.
So I guess everything comes full circle.
Absolutely.
I go from never taking an ear training class to teaching an advanced jazz ear training class in a university. So I'm really excited about that. Yep.
How often do you play live? Is that something that you like really put a priority on, or do you kind of focus more on the kind of the creation beforehand?
I absolutely love playing live. I play live as often as I can. It's kind of interesting. I live in Quebec, which is a very French dominated. It's like the French province. And I'm an Anglophone. I'm learning French. But it's not the easiest to get gigs when all you can say is bonsoir tout le monde, je suis très contente d'être ici, je suis Caity Gyorgy, and that's, I have my spiel. I know what to say, but if anybody wants to talk to me at the set break and they're speaking in French, my eyes kind of gloss over, or I look like a deer in headlights. I'm like, oh mon Dieu, désolé. It's not good. So, a lot of my shows are outside of the province of Quebec, La Belle Province, and so that's why I go to Toronto so often, is because I can book gigs there, no problem, and booking gigs in Calgary is no problem, or British Columbia. It's just expensive to travel across Canada. My goodness.
Yeah, for sure.
But it is something that I place a lot of value on. I am a performer, and I love performing my own repertoire. I love performing standard repertoire, but I have been taking a little. I mean, COVID was obviously pretty difficult.
For sure, for everyone,
Yeah, I did some live streams. They're okay. It's not like the real thing, though.
It's not the same. Yeah, it's not the same. It's just such an energy thing. Like,
I
and
completely
especially
agree.
Like with the live stream versus the live shows, like when you can feel the audience there, it just creates
100%.
like this such a special dynamic. So I totally understand that.
Yeah. So, I mean, shows were pretty dead for a bit. And then of course I'm working on my Master's of Jazz Performance degree right now.
Oh, amazing.
And so that's why I'm in Montreal. And
cool.
This last semester was a pretty difficult one. I took a very difficult seminar. I still need to write a 15-page research paper for that. And that's due pretty soon, so I got to get on that.
Well, thank you for taking the time to connect with me.
Absolutely. No, this is like a very, very, very welcome distraction. A very good way to procrastinate.
So
the best way to procrastinate.
Actually, your university sent me to connect with you to remind you that, hey, that paper is due. You do need to work on that.
That makes sense. That seems like something they would do.
That's so good. I love that. And I've already told you about several of my like music friends. I'm like, you guys have to check this person out. Like, they're so talented.
Oh, thank you.
Keep doing it. I love it. Even if for no one else, just keep releasing stuff so I have more music to listen to.
Incredible. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much. This was awesome. And
thank you so much for having me.
I'm super excited to hear whatever you have coming up next. You definitely have a loyal fan in me now.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
it was so great to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll look forward to us connecting again soon.
Me too. Yeah,
awesome.
Sounds great.
Take care, Caity. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Tell Me Yours. Thank you so much, Caity, for sharing that story. If you want to follow Caity, every social media platform from Instagram to TikTok to Spotify, she is simply at Caity Gyorgy, and that's Caity and then George with Y's instead of E's. Gyorgy. Please go look her up. Like I said, she has quickly become one of my favorite jazz artists. She's consistently in the rotation of music for me now. I've really, really loved that I've found her music. I'm confident you will feel the same. Please check her out. If you want some more time with Caity, an extended chat, some more laughs, head over to patreon.com/tellmeyours. You'll get the exclusive unedited interview with Caity. Then if you want to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, we are just at tellmeyyourspod. Please reach out to us, let us know, like and subscribe, comment, share with your friends. Everything helps. I've really loved recording these and chatting with these incredible people, and I'm super excited to continue to do that. Thank you so much again for listening, and until next week, be kind to each other, and we'll talk soon.